All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Of Like Minds video podcast, episode 13. I have a super special guest today, one of my closest homies, Sean Nang from UCLA. Sean, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Sean, so just kind of introducing you to the people and just kind of giving a background on you. Just I know you're from the Alhambra, Pasadena area. Just you can just talk to us a little bit about what it was like growing up in that community.
So I grew up in Alhambra pretty much through high school, and then we moved to South Pasadena for high school. I would say the neighborhood that I grew up in Alhambra was pretty safe, but just kind of like one street down the block may have been a little weird, but I think, my parents were really good about making sure that we were safe. Honestly, kind of living quote unquote sheltered life in a sense, I think. But at the same time, I don't think they necessarily hid anything from both me and my brother. Had conversations with us. But I think, they were just open.
Cool. Oh,
Yeah.
did you want to add? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I think it's kind of hard to maybe talk about just from kind of a blank slate of kind of childhood, only because I always view myself as having a typical childhood, if you kind of understand.
What do you mean by that for those that may be listening that don't know?
Went to, I don't know if it's typical, but my story is kind of, growing up, private school education through middle school at a private Catholic school. And then we were, fortunate enough to be able to move to a pretty good school district in South Pass, go to high school there, which I think helped me kind of get out of my shell. I think I was always a shy kid, but having the opportunity to move to South Pass, and then the opportunities there and the education there, the school system there really helped me kind of grow into kind of the person I am. But just from the get-go, just having those opportunities to be able to do that. And I think I've always viewed myself as not necessarily having quote unquote struggles per se. But maybe I'm also not giving myself enough credit at times, but it's kind of my self-view,
No, yeah, just being more critical. No, that makes sense. I mean, well, when you moved to relocate in South Pasadena for high school, did you still stay in the private school, or were you into public at that point, or what was that like?
Public school.
So what was that adjustment like? Yeah, what was that adjustment like?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point, because I went to private Catholic school, uniforms every day, class size of 30 something people, and then jumping into public high school where you're like the new kid. All the kids come from the same middle school, so everybody knows each other. The adjustment was for sure a little difficult at the beginning, but I think my saving grace, and I've told this to some of my friends and to my girlfriend as well, that sports, I think, has always been my saving grace in terms of sure, I was a new kid, but I was really good at sports. So easy to adjust, easy to kind of get into a group of people and have them, you kind of earn their respect in a sense by being good at sports, at least, especially in high school. And you can honestly say that, I think, about adult world now, you join a basketball league, right? And if you can play, then you earned automatic respect. So
absolutely. Well, I know from knowing you, obviously you played football and you also played basketball. I don't know if you played anything else, but I know you played football and basketball.
Yeah.
And what was that like? Oh yeah.
I was gonna say I also did track and field.
Nice. And so what was that like? What was that setup like? Did you do multiple sports within a school year? Obviously they have their own seasons, or what was that like, just balancing those sports?
Yes, I was a basketball track mainly, and senior year is when I really decided I'll try football. Why not? But I think just, going through high school with having, you can do fall basketball, winter basketball, and then, spring season comes, you have track and field, and then summer comes, you have basketball again. It kind of keeps you occupied and keeps you don't need to really think too hard about what to do, because it's already sort of laid out in front of you, right? I play basketball, so of course summer comes around and we're not going on a vacation, I have summer basketball, sort of thing. So
Was there one in particular that you might have leaned towards, you might have gravitated towards in terms of enjoying more, or what was that
I think
like?
it fluctuated
Okay.
as through the different years. So growing up, basketball was my childhood sport.
Mm,
So I've always enjoyed that. But I think sometimes when you've played a sport for so long, you kind of, I don't know, if losing like the joy of playing it sometimes can happen, especially if you don't have, coaches that support you and whatnot.
mm,
Um, so definitely with basketball in high school, it was kind of like uh, started out really high, and then I think come senior year was probably my least favorite sport, and
mm.
then track and field was kind of like I'll just do this as like an off-season conditioning thing, and then as I grew into it, it got a lot better with coaches supporting me.
Mm.
By senior year, it was my favorite.
Wow. And so if you were to kind of talk about just, I think anytime that, you're pursuing higher education, and we're going to get into that in a little bit, but a lot of the lessons learned outside of the classroom are just as important, if not more important. And so with sports being such a huge part of your transition to public school and kind of getting more acclimated and gaining the respect of your peers, like you had mentioned,
Yeah.
what would you say is kind of the biggest things you learned from each of those sports, and how that's kind of helped you transition into moving forth in every step in your career?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's cliche, but I think with sports, you kind of sometimes learn to push through adversity, push through pain. I mean, it's I think on the light side, but like conditioning and whatnot, and or you lost a game, but you kind of learn to keep going and not necessarily have something hold you back, right?
Mm,
Um, One thing that I thought of though is actually you kind of touched upon like, and I kind of said it earlier, is like when I've played sports, I've kind of automatically earned respect in that sense.
mhm,
And one of the things I think that I've thought about these days is was sports and being good at sports sometimes a kind of a crutch per se, right? Like because I'm good at sports, I get that automatic quote unquote automatic respect.
mm,
Maybe I've had some deficiencies per se in other areas just because I didn't need to work as hard to earn respect in other
mm.
areas because I've earned the respect through like sports or what. So I don't know. Something I've been having thoughts of over the past couple months.
Yeah. I mean, especially with, you being so involved in sports and that kind of translating. And I guess just to knowing how, and we'll kind of get into this as well too later, but just knowing the impact that even sports has
Yeah.
throughout our UCLA times. And
Yeah.
um, just for those that are just tuning in and listening to Sean's story, just um, maybe not pursuing sports, but if you can say if there's an overarching theme from the three that outside of the mental push, physical
Mm,
push from
mm,
conditioning,
mm,
that have kind of impacted you, but you more so didn't expect. So maybe something that wouldn't be so cliche, but something like, whoa, like you look back and you're like, man, that was actually cultivated through my experience in sports. If you could just think about if something comes to
mm.
mind for that.
Cultivate. Repeat the question. Let me
Yeah,
mull it
yeah,
over.
yeah. Yeah. So just, um, the sports that you played in high school, maybe lessons you've learned or characteristics you developed
Mm, mm,
in any of those sports, or all
mm,
three,
mm,
that you may have not thought would have been a thing, but you kind of learn, you know, later down the line, like, whoa, that was actually, I learned that from track, or I learned that from ball, or I learned that from football. So if there are.
yeah. One thing that I thought of is I don't know if it's a lesson I learned at the time, but when in retrospect, it's something that I think
Hmm.
about a lot too.
Yeah.
Is we'll use basketball as an example,
Okay.
but it kind of applies to both track and football as well. Is
Yeah.
kind of confidence, right? Like I think growing up as playing sports, I always feared being like, I don't want to be the cocky one, I don't want to be the ball hog, I'm going to be the team player, blah blah blah, which is great. I think that's definitely an aspect um, to apply to life. But I think depending on where you land in the spectrum, I think there are some players who maybe need to focus on like teamwork and being hardworking, but there's other players I think who may need to actually try to lean towards more of that confident, cocky side per se.
Mm.
Um, and I think it goes back to the self-doubt and confidence. And sometimes if you have like two players of the same caliber, but one's more confident, the confident player is better, right?
Yeah.
Or the confident player is a little more successful. I think that goes back to just, again, self-confidence to kind of drive you forward.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I love that. And just kind of transitioning into academia. You're the shy kid, you're transitioning into, public school and making that
Yeah.
adjustment, and you found sports almost as a refuge.
Yeah.
Maybe how did that translate in the classroom? Because I don't know if that same respect just naturally translated, or was it kind of having to reprove yourself in the classroom, and also your aspirations for higher education while you were in high school? What was that mentality like?
Sure. So I think similar sports, growing up, I think school kind of was a natural, like the academic side of school is also quite natural. So I always kind of buried myself in academics and buried myself in sports and let the social stuff kind of happen along the way. It wasn't really necessarily my focus. And then regarding, like, I guess, higher education, it was always, I guess, a presumption. Maybe because the fact that, like, my parents both went to college, even though it was college back in the Philippines, it was kind of already assumed that, of course I'm going to college. To do what? I don't know, but it was always a presumption. Yeah. The next step naturally after high school is college.
Yeah. And so was there any, like, when you're casting your net and you're going into applications, that I know a lot of people, like, kind of just got accepted, and so what was that like in terms of, we're just going to spoil it now, but you ended up going to UCLA, top public university in the world. And so where was that on your list? Was it like the reach school? Was it the, you know what I'm saying? Was it the safe school? And what was it for you? And back in that time?
Well, to be honest, my dream school is actually Stanford, but didn't get accepted. And then so kind of my next two, like, realistic choices were Berkeley and UCLA. So I was actually deciding between both. I did apply to some Ivy Leagues, but those were more like, I'll just apply for fun, as opposed to really seriously considering going. But it was between UCLA and Berkeley. Kind of like the vibes of UCLA back when I was a senior. Decided to go, and I think it was a great choice. I think, networks here. I was close with family, but, like, still able to feel like, not at home, right? Yeah, far enough, right? Because they're like a 30-minute drive from Pasadena, but at the same time, I don't need to always go back home. So
No, absolutely. And so, kind of connecting to how we met, you and I met actually in I think one of the oldest, if not the oldest, dorm rooms, dorm buildings. So Dykstra. So shout out to Dykstra. I know that was right before renovations happened, but moving to Dykstra, and what I always think about first, prior to even the building, is the group of people that we met there. And so just talking about our D8 friend group from college, and what it's like to have that support system so quickly, similar to how you kind of found sports in high school, and now having like a support system that just immediately kind of helps ease our way in. Like, what was that like for your experience?
Definitely, I think I took it for granted during college. When I look back now, and especially the fact that, like, a lot of us are still friends, Shannon and I are obviously together. So, like, obviously another big part of my life, but, like, definitely took it for granted at the time. And looking back, I'm like, wow, I think I should have made more effort to, like, hang out and whatnot. I think a lot of times you get caught up in your day to day, right? Like, when you're in school, you get caught up in, your classes and all that, your extracurriculars, and nowadays you get caught up in work and whatnot. But, like, it was such a good group.
Yeah. And yeah, I was just going to say that, I mean, even Shannon, Lauren, oh my God, I'm blanking out. There's, like, basically everyone writes. I don't know if you get that Christmas card. You get that Christmas card?
Yes. Yeah. I helped take the photos this year. I was behind the camera. If you got it this year.
Jessica was on that too.
Yes.
So I think you hit it right in the head. I think it's for those of you listening, just tuning in right now, it's trying to be more in the moment. I think especially now it's kind of easier to realize that kind of the world's slowing down, but getting those cards every year
Yeah.
makes me like the happiest. It really does, because I'm like, man, I'm getting all this love
Yeah.
and
Like,
support.
did you think
No,
that those people on your floor would be like this impactful to your life? Kind of
no,
crazy.
no, absolutely not. And that's the some of the best things in life are surprises. I know it sounds so cheesy, but I remember seeing their names. I was like, oh my God, like I'm still getting this. Like I love it. And I texted each of them. I texted each of them, and not like a mass text, but I texted each of them separately. So that's how you know. And it was just it was all I could do to like I was filled with so much like a rush, because
Yeah.
you remember like how down all of them were. And so no, I absolutely agree with that. They were one of our constants probably in all 4 years. I don't know if you there were other
Yeah.
spaces that you were in at UCLA that had multiple years that were a constant for you, maybe
Yeah.
inside or outside the classroom. I don't know if there's any groups that you were involved in at UCLA for multiple years. If you can talk about that, if you have any.
Yeah, sure. So I did a cappella for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I
What group
did
again? What was the name? What was the name?
Deviant Voices.
Deviant. Yes, 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 yes,
Definitely one of the
sir.
lower tier a cappella groups,
Hey,
but it was
I
fun. It
I've
was
been I
fun.
went to a few performances, and Sean, you were definitely a humble man. So
Oh man,
you're great, man. You were great.
best background singer ever, right?
What else?
Um,
What else?
I did Unicamp for
Mm-hmm.
3 years, and then I kind of dabbled in like the KCM Korean Christian Ministry, and that's where I actually met a couple of my roommates who I lived with sophomore year and on.
Mm,
Figured what I kind of, trying to explore religion and where I really believed in that sort of stuff. Kind of tapered off after sophomore year, but also made some great connections there too. Even if
mm.
I think at this point I'm not really religious.
Yeah. Well,
You know.
I mean, I think just kind of going on a quick tangent, just talking about roommate situation. That's
Yeah.
actually a great point. Talking about when you first go to UCLA
Yeah.
and being in Dykstra, what was your room situation like in terms of the roommates? What was that
Mm.
dynamic like?
Yeah. So it was. We did a random. I did random.
Mm-hmm.
So it was me, Steve, who was I think he was from China, and then Josh, who was from San Diego.
Mm.
Uh, I think we got along. We were never like necessarily like super close. Like me and Josh would sometimes have like those late night roommate talks kind of thing, but
Yeah.
never really hung out like outside of the room. Really, we'd get maybe food like a couple times in the beginning, but kind of
Yeah.
just never really developed into any real relationship. Which I guess is when you say it like that's a little sad, but at the same time, I think it worked for us.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people's roommate situations are like that's already like solid. I feel like especially for doing random, I
Yeah,
know a lot of people can either go into it
yeah,
knowing, like I always say one of my saving graces in college were my roommates. Because
yeah.
at the time I had Mikey and James, and I had them
Yeah, you
uh,
guys were solid.
yeah, I had them for my first 2 years, and then they were my apartment mates. Mikey was my actually roommate for 4 years in the apartments as well. So, it kind of works both ways, right? Sometimes you just
Yeah,
get like a solid like just people that are respectful and that acknowledge the space, and then for me, it's like some of my closest friends I just like
right.
work out with. So I mean, I'm glad it worked out though, because I know some people have some horror
There are horror
stories,
stories, right?
and
There
I
are horror
know
stories.
a lot of people are kind of I get asked that from like younger kids, like, oh, like what's it like to like how did you find your roommate situation? So
You guys met through the like.
BLW admit weekend, yeah. So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
we
okay,
met we met like 2 months before we graduated high school. So we kind of got to know each other already and get a feel for it. But I actually got lucky because funny that you said that you were thinking about going to Cal,
yeah.
or Berkeley, but they Mikey and James were actually going to room together, and they were gonna have one more person room
Yeah.
with them, but he ended up choosing Berkeley,
Oh,
and so I kind of lucked out. So I
nice.
always say like that small domino of if Moses, I believe, if he ended up going to UCLA, I wouldn't have had those roommates. Like life would be really different. So it's crazy to even
Yeah.
think like
In retrospect, you see those small like things, and you're like, wow.
having the biggest impact. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
Shout out to Moses for killing it in Berkeley, and I lucked out and got James and Mikey, and
Yeah.
so, but yeah, so okay, so just kind of going back to Deviant Voices, and you're doing the KCM stuff and other spaces that may have had impact on you, or just others, even if it wasn't multiple years, just outside the classroom
Mm,
stuff.
trying to think in college.
I know it's
I
long
feel like
already.
I played a lot of basketball.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've ever told you the story, but did you know that uh I tried out I was actually for maybe 3 years of college, I was trying out for the UCLA track team.
What you?
Did have I told you this before?
No, so now you got to share with the world. What's up with
Uh
that?
well, I think it's because it's always I don't know why, but it's always embarrassing. I don't
No.
know because I there's this again this whole self doubt of like, oh man, Sean thinks he's a poser, blah blah blah, right? But um looking back, I think it was kind of cool. So in high school, I was always kind of just an average, above average, like track and field athlete.
Mhm.
Like frosh off freshman year, sophomore year actually was JV, but then at the end I got bumped up to varsity. But it was kind of like, I was just kind of middle of the road. Junior
Mhm.
year, same thing, and then all of a sudden, senior year, I exploded. Like triple jump was my main event.
Yeah.
At one point, I was like top 10 in the state in terms of like my mark. So I was like, oh shoot, maybe I can, do this in college too.
Yeah.
Um, so talked with the UCLA track coach, and they're like, oh yeah, we can, work you out and see what you got. And my freshman year, they were essentially at the end, they were like, no, we don't have room. We don't want to. I was like, okay, that's cool. I forget the exact timeline, but I think sophomore year is when I still wanted to do it. And the way you kind of do it is you go in and go to different track meets and compete like individually. So you'll go to
Mm.
various like Cal State LA, Cal State Long Beach, various high schools, and just participate in these open meets during like the winter to
Mhm.
see if you can hit the mark um, in time for like spring track and field season for college. Um, so did that sophomore year, didn't really hit the right marks, so didn't follow up. Got injured junior year, so didn't really continue on with that. And then senior year, I actually, again talking with the coach, it's like, hey, still want to do this. If you're open, he's like, well, if you can hit 48 feet, if you can hit 48 feet, then we should have a spot for you essentially. Go in. I think it was maybe the last meet, open meet in winter. I hit 48 feet. All right, let's do this, right?
What?
Let's do this. Um, and one of the most disappointing things is they just still said no. So definitely super frustrating, But at the same time, I look back and even then, I was like, still a lot of fun. Like, still a lot of fun to go out those track meets. My mom would go out with me. She would help me like make sure I'm on the board correctly, videoing me and all that stuff. So
Oh
still
well.
a really good experience, but yeah.
No, that this is also a shock to me, but this is awesome. Well, I mean, first of all, how do you? I have so many questions. How do you even get into contact with the track team, like, or the coach, to even get them
Yeah.
to say, like, how do you even seriously? Because I feel like that's something, especially with, for those that don't know, UCLA athletics are pretty damn good. Not being biased, but
Yeah.
there's I don't know how many championships are at this point. When we left, when we graduated in 2015, there had to have been 117, 100,
Yeah,
something like that
definitely over
numbers.
100.
So I don't even know where we're at now, but UC athletics is definitely extremely high. So what was that even? How did you even get to talk and sit down?
Yeah, so my high school coach, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, getting supported by a great coach like really makes a
Mm,
huge difference. Really helped me through training and all that, and he was the one who kind of put me in contact. Like, hey, I think this is the person you should reach out to, and that's kind of how it went. And you know, Coach Richards, who was my high school coach, actually helped me through like training throughout the whole time too, giving me tips, giving me workouts, as well as all that stuff. So um, yeah, but it is a little like weird. Like, are they going to take me seriously? Like,
mm,
like, am I just some like random person like wanting to like, oh, I want to be like UCLA sports or whatever? And I think that
yeah.
was my fear, like kind of the fear of judgment. If I
Mm,
thought of that about people, maybe they think, I don't know,
yeah.
you know?
And you said you had done that for what, 2, 3 years that you were trying out?
Yeah, I did it for I think 2 years seriously, which was sophomore year and senior year. Freshman year is kind of still like adjusting to college
And then
life. So it wasn't like
junior year you were injured, right?
injured exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, you're doing this on top of your extracurriculars and school,
Yeah.
and balancing that. So what did it do to the self-confidence, to you already being like naturally kind of shy? And so
Yeah.
you hearing that answer and you thinking that you have a shot, and then even when you actually hit the mark of what you were
Exactly.
supposed to and they still said no,
Exactly.
what is that whole progression of hearing no and just almost not feeling like whatever you did it wasn't good enough? Like, what was that like?
Definitely devastating. I think, yeah, just, I remember, I think I sort of remember the night where I got that like response. It was like super frustrating. I remember like almost like tearing up per se. And I just
Mm,
like I wanted to like, what do I do? And I remember just like writing down all my thoughts and just very disappointed, very frustrating. Um, yeah. But again, I think I also had the foresight at the time too, just to think, hey, it's still a lot of fun, you know.
mhm.
I made my roommates like work out with me on the track sometimes too. It was just
Yeah.
yeah, I have some like good memories of it. It's kind of nostalgic to think about like, oh, me and my mom going on the weekend to a track meet,
Mm,
kind of thing. It's kind of like very nice.
yeah,
So
no, absolutely. I mean, if there was something at least positive in terms of the lessons learned, I think a lot of the time that when we think of failure, we think of waste of time and we feel
yeah,
embarrassed and we can feel all these negative things. But,
yeah,
how did you ultimately use that to kind of catapult your way and navigate through school
yeah,
and then just get back, just even getting back on track? Like you said, it was devastating. You felt, a serious moment of emotion and just, you know,
yeah.
a lot has got to be running through your mind. So if you can just kind of take us through that.
I think really the one thought that I had, I think that's kept me grounded per se is like, hey, you tried your best, right? If you didn't, I remember this thought when I had like senior years, like, should I go for it again? Like I was injured. I'm kind of, but would I regret not trying it? Like,
Mm,
you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
when I look back at this time, like, damn, I should have, like, what if, like, damn, I should have tried it. But now I can look back and like, hey, I did it. Even if I didn't get it, it was actually still a lot of fun. Um,
Yeah.
so
And I think that's a big thing to be said too, is you literally answered my question I had in my head, but just the idea of, you know, are you going to allow fear to dictate your choices, or are you going to at least go for it and then live and know that you did your best, you
yeah,
gave it your all, and now you don't have regrets and you're not questioning like, man, why didn't I?
yeah,
And
there's a
so,
sense of satisfaction and contentment
mm,
knowing that you did that, and just makes you feel good.
no, no, absolutely.
you
And
know
like that's something, like for those of you guys are tuning in, is just, I think, even exemplified here in Sean's stories, failure is actually a great thing for us. And I think it's a lot easier now. I know coming back when we're 19, 20, 21, it's even hard. It's still hard now, but even then
yeah,
it's just like, we're still coming into our own really. And
seriously.
that's got to be backbreaking. But, I'm definitely glad that it's done that for you.
I thought I told you this before, but maybe I didn't.
No,
Again,
I
maybe I've been shy about sharing this.
probably,
uh
but I appreciate you for sharing that. Here of all places for the first time.
I
um,
think I'm learning to be comfortable with it now.
well, I appreciate it. I think that story is even just inspiring for me right now, because it just makes me, for whatever that, if you're even thinking about doing something, it's like you have to go for it, because you
Yeah,
don't want to. I think
exactly.
that's the worst thing. That's the fear. You wouldn't want to just think. You want to actually know, right? You never want
Exactly.
to think.
Exactly.
Kind of taking us through, Sean, what you focused on at UCLA in terms of major, and what it was like navigating through that in terms of
Mm,
class load,
mhm.
responsibility, balancing socially.
Yeah,
So what did you major in? Just kind of share a little bit about that.
sure. I was a bio major. I started out as a bio major, kind of maybe winter quarter, spring quarter. I was like, what do I really want to do with a bio major? Do I want to be a doctor? I don't think it's something that passionate enough about to dedicate a lot more years of schooling to. I enjoy it just like kind of academically and educationally kind of thing. But,
Hmm.
and so one of my roommates or future roommates was like, hey, I'm going to pick up an accounting minor. And so that's actually took an accounting class, and I was like, yeah, I can see myself doing this for, you know, for a, for a career. Picked it up starting freshman year, spring quarter, and kind of just ran with it. So bio major, accounting minor, kind of strange combo. Doesn't really like, you don't really see it tying hand in hand. They're not really complementary, but I think one of the nice things about having two completely different like areas of
Mm.
focus is like, man, every time I was tired of my bio class, oh, I had accounting. And every
Mm,
time I did not want to do accounting, I had my bio class. So
that
it's kind of fun.
balance.
Yeah, it was a really
No,
good balance.
no, absolutely. And I think I did want to obviously dive more into the minor, but just real quickly, at least from my experience, I did major in world arts and cultures at
Mhm.
UCLA. I always tell people it's like if you were to combine English and history, it's kind of a mix of that. Was able to dance as a part of that major, which was really awesome. And then I did the visual and performing arts education minor.
Mm,
And so for me, I actually got my first job post grad from my minor, and I feel like that's so advantageous to minor because
yeah,
your minor is so specific, and
yeah,
it's a specific skill set that is like makes you even more prepared
yeah.
for something specifically like that. So if you can just talk a little bit about how you minoring in accounting has ultimately kind of shaped your career post grad and what that's like, that impact of the power of minoring.
Yeah, no, I think it in the end it kind of goes back to like building skill set and like um, adding a major, having another minor, just another thing you can add to your like personal, personal resume per se, like your
Mm-hmm.
skill set. Um, and then with accounting specifically, it was kind of a nicely laid out trajectory, right? Like the typical person who wants to kind of pursue accounting is like, junior year you'll pursue internships. Ideally you get a job from that internship and you're kind of set senior year. So I remember back in senior year when we used to hang out, I'm like, oh yeah, I already have a job afterwards, so I don't have to worry. And so that was a really great like peace of mind to be able to enjoy that last year. Um, and again, it's something that I thought like it's a good starting point for my career. Knowing about accounting, knowing about like finance generally is a good skill, even if you're not working in it, just to understand
Mm-hmm.
ins and outs, right?
Absolutely.
It's kind of the financial language. And so I was like, even if I don't make this a career, like it's still good knowledge to have.
Very valuable. Every
Yeah,
every every company, every business needs accounting, so it's a
exactly.
vital skill. No, I love that, and I think that's obviously powerful too. And that's, I know that played a huge role because having that, and not to say that you didn't work for it, you worked your ass off for that, but having that, you kind of relax during senior year because you have something. Just how did that kind of change the way you kind of maybe habitually, or just the way that you kind of worked? Like how did that change the work ethic? How did that change the layout of how you did things, productivity
Mm.
in your fourth year at school?
Uh, I think I would say the fact that there was no pressure probably helped me perform a little bit better. I know there are people
Mm,
who can really like perform under pressure, and sometimes I like to think about myself like, oh yeah,
yeah.
under crunch time I'm really good. But there are times when under crunch time not necessarily, and not having that pressure was kind of nice. I think senior year might have been my best year academically actually.
Wow.
And I think it was my heaviest class load too, trying to finish up the minor. So so it was like I don't know. It's kind of you think that would go against logic, right? But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there was a lot of, and senior year was also my most fun, right? I had at the same time I had my most classes. Um, I didn't have that pressure. I was still going out for this track thing, but at the same time, I think I was able to cultivate a lot of relationships too. I think this is the year we actually got
Mm,
closer too. Toward the
yeah.
end of junior year, senior year, we hung
Yes.
out a lot more.
We did. We did.
Yeah.
We went to, at the time, it was the bar that was still named, it was O'Hara's still at the time.
Oh, Harris, yes,
And so
yes.
we used to
Ah,
go,
yes.
I don't know if you remember, everyone would go. And if you lived in Westwood, and if you ever went to UCLA in the last 20 years and probably even beyond, you would know this, but they had pint night on Tuesdays. And so we would go. I remember
Ah,
going,
so
I
fun.
went like third year, and I remember like I was getting everyone. I'm like, don't go on pine night, Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yes.
Thursdays is
Yeah,
also
yeah,
pine
yeah.
night, so I tell everyone to go Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, because like Mondays was like
Dude, they had some great
dollar,
deals too.
it was like dollar whiskey shots, dollar
Yeah.
tequila,
Yeah.
like,
For
and
a
then like
college student, like,
yeah, it was
dude.
like, and then like we had like we used to go, you and I used to go, like we used to be a little, we would try to feel classier as we got older, and so we would go like during the middle of the week, and it was like
Oh yes.
$4.
The Wednesdays was like
The
the just the low key but like the best nights.
yeah, it wasn't crowded at all, but it was just like conversation, and you don't have to worry about driving because everyone essentially lives in Westwood, the village,
Yeah, that
so
was
it's
great.
all there. And so you and I used to just go there every Wednesday and just chat it
Just
up and drink.
so fun. So
Take like
fun.
$10 and just be like 3 drinks and
Solid.
then
Yeah, solid. And I think I forget there was a deal for like just $5 like cocktails too. So I was like also pretty legit. I forget what day that was, but
some of the
man,
best times, some of the best times, I'm like thinking about it now, I'm like, man, like we really lived that up.
yeah.
Which is great. I know, other than going out to drink and hanging out with our freshman core group, D8, for the building, why we call it D8, because it was the eighth floor and it was on Dykstra, the building. But we also kind of got along too in sports. We used to
Yeah.
we actually played pickup not pickup we actually played in a league. I think it was freshman year, which didn't we didn't do too hot
Yeah,
freshman year.
yeah.
Freshman year
It
it
was
was
it was
like
our floor. It was our floor group. So
yeah.
like you got some really good players and you got some not so good players. I think later on we kind of learned to tailor our team
Yeah.
to be a little bit better.
But I think I met, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you were in one of the games where like only five of us showed up. And so like you guys were, I remember you and Mikey, I think were in that game. You guys were just telling us you guys were just gassed because you didn't have no, but for those of you that aren't sports fans, it's like in basketball, there's only five players on each team at a time. So like usually there's like 10, 11 of us that would show up, but like there was one week I feel like it was like only five of you. And like I just felt so bad, but I just thought that was so
uh,
funny, like that you guys still committed to that. But
yeah.
even post grad too, that we still
Yeah,
we
yeah.
still actually played a
I was
basketball league. Do you
I was
remember that?
driving down yeah, I was driving down to 5 the other day and I was like, dude, remember when me, you, Mikey, Raymar used to go like play in this league together? My brother was there too. Like
Yeah.
it was on a Sunday night. Like I would drive an hour, like hour and a half from, and you would come from like the west
Yeah.
side all the way
Yeah.
to Anaheim. Like,
Yep. Well, we you were part of that team, right? We won.
oh no, that was the one season I couldn't I forget why. I think it might have been I forget why, but I couldn't make it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know we had played a couple times. And I don't know if it was that season, but I mean, those were just fun because
Yeah.
that's something that most of the guys on our team had at least played, organized ball, and I just kind of grew up just playing pickup. So it was just awesome to just share that and just share that, like that, the court and that battling with you
Yeah,
guys,
so
because
so
how
fun.
intense.
Yeah.
Some of our best memories, man. Now it was incredible. But just kind of going back to UCLA, and a lot of our networks are from UCLA,
Yeah.
you know. But I did want to talk about, a big thing about pursuing higher education
Hmm.
is the investment
Mm.
and the amount of money it is to go to school. It's very expensive. And even when we went to school, it's going to sound scary, but we almost went to school 10 years ago. So 2011,
Was
we're
our
coming up on
first?
it. So
That's crazy.
to think that prices have even fluctuated more
Yeah.
upwards.
Yeah.
And just talking about, your situation, in terms of like dealing with student loans, and if you can just kind of shed a little bit of light on, yeah, just your situation on that.
Yeah, I think definitely coming from like privileged background. We were talking about this earlier, how my parents I actually never actually like once I graduated didn't really necessarily pay off my student loans on my own because my dad was like, hey, I got this for you per se.
Mm,
Um, but also just for more detail, I also didn't realize that through my time at UCLA, like I got a lot of grant money, scholarship sort of thing through like academic performance, etc. So like my parents actually didn't have to pay that much, like get a lot of loans because a lot of it was covered by grant money.
mm,
And maybe this is me being naive during the time, not kind of wanting to deal with it. But my dad has always been really good with like finances and money, and so he was kind of like, "Hey, just oh yeah, dad will handle it," kind of thing. Only now that I realize like, oh, there was obviously blessed that, they were able to pay off my student loan, but also at the same time didn't realize that some of for my own doing, kind of lessen the burden per se.
Absolutely. Well, what is that? I mean, I think it may or may not have had a similar effect to kind of securing a job
Yeah.
senior year, and then kind of feeling like you could perform better. So what effect, if any, how did that affect you, moving forward, just knowing that you worked hard enough to get the scholarships and the grants, but then also getting that support from your family, which I know that
Yeah.
and I appreciate you for even recognizing, like you said, that privilege that you had. But what did that do for you in the moment, receiving that support and then moving forward?
For sure thankful, and also the fact that like, supported, I can decide to do whatever, and I think I'll still get support from my family. And another thing too, like after college, I lived at home for like the first 2 years, so being able to live at home close to the job where I work at, like, is also another blessing, right? Because you can kind of save up and do all that.
Absolutely. It's a huge thing, especially now. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Kind of brought him up a little bit earlier, but your brother, and I know recently, kind of before the pandemic hit, you had visited your brother, I think right before. So if you can just talk about what that was like traveling. I think damn near it was within the first couple of weeks of March. So it was right before quarantine. So what was that whole thing like?
Yeah. Okay. So for context, to set the story, Shannon and I, Shannon being my girlfriend, just for our listeners, there was a great deal on flights to like Europe, $300 round trip. So we're like,
whoa.
This was early in our relationship too. So I was kind of like, should we just go for it? This is going to be our first big trip. It's a trip to Europe, but damn, these tickets are so cheap. Let's do it. Obviously not knowing that the whole COVID pandemic would hit around that time. So we fly out March 7th, and already it's been picking up. Like, should we travel? Is it responsible for us to travel? Will we get COVID? All that stuff. And not necessarily that we were scared about COVID affecting us personally, but like bringing it back, right, to our parents and whatnot. In the end, we decided to still go. We brought a lot of hand sanitizer and all that. Our first stop was Budapest. That was the ideal vacation. Like, didn't feel like anything was wrong, all and everything. Our next stop was Vienna, and that's when Trump made his announcement for the Europe trip ban. And so we're like, oh shoot, this is in the middle of the night, like 3 a.m.
Damn.
People are calling us. People are texting us.
Yeah.
What do we do? Are we going to get stranded if we're all here? Should we rebook our flights? All that stuff.
Yeah.
We're like, well, it took a day to really process. You know what? Let's continue on to our next stop, Berlin. We'll see how things play out. Most likely, we're already feeling that we're not going to make our last stop to Paris, but let's just go to Berlin first, continue our trip, and from there, we'll decide on. When we arrive in Berlin, all the clubs are closed, all the beer gardens are closed. At the time, in the beginning, the restaurants were still open, so that was nice. But toward the end, they were already doing pickup only, all that stuff. So going through that. But what was really nice is just being actually able to spend like real time with my brother and his girlfriend, who also moved to Germany with him. Yeah. And we just spent a lot of time at their apartment at night, bought like the really good but cheap beers in the corner liquor store. And they come in like half liter bottles for like $2 essentially. That was great. But getting a pizza, hanging out, playing games, talking, chatting, so it was really nice.
Yeah.
Definitely a different type of vacation though.
And I'm glad you guys obviously were able to come back and also get the best of both. Like you said, you got to spend a lot of quality time with your brother, still hit up most of your spots aside from Paris, and then get back safely. So definitely like you got in and out of there as fast as you could, did what you had to do, came back safely, and just kind of taking us to where you are now, and kind of giving context for those that if you're just tuning in now, or kind of refreshing on Sean's narrative of doing bio as a major, and then you have accounting as a minor, and kind of, you can just shed a little bit of light of, where you are at now, what you're working, what you're currently doing, and just what that's like.
Yeah, so I'm at Netflix as a content accountant. And so kind of can see that accounting, the minor in accounting really played a huge role in my career so far, right?
Yeah.
So kind of I work on right, the content accounting team supporting the Korea and Southeast Asia
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So all the Korean dramas that you see are titles that I actually kind of like quote unquote manage.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just thinking about how a simple decision to like, oh, I'm going to pick up a minor because my buddy's taking this accounting class has led me to be here. And there's just a lot of dominoes along the way too that
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's enough time to even go through, but like,
Yeah.
you're like, wow, it's how awesome that I work for a great company. I'm able to work from home, all that stuff without
Mm-hmm.
really much of a hiccup,
No, absolutely. I think it's always, I think when you first told me about the job, I was just like, that was one of those moments where, for me as a good friend of yours, just being so happy because it's those kinds of things where you kind of look back and you're like, and maybe you don't feel like this now that you've been there for almost, a couple of years, but it's, you realize like, this is why you work hard, and,
Yeah,
you obviously worked to get to where you're at. Um,
you take a step
yeah,
back sometimes and look, and you're like, oh wow, it's a great job,
yeah.
a great spot to be in.
Yeah, and especially given the current climate of what everyone's kind of going through right now, I know that you've kind of shared with me before that you kind of started work. You've always had the ability to work from home every now and then, maybe once a week,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so I know a lot of people are dealing with now that mix. My girlfriend as well is dealing with the working from home, and that's kind of taking a toll. And just I'm sure a lot of other people are. And
yeah.
even though you've had the ability to always work from home, what are some things that you may be doing right now that have kind of helped you deal with that adjustment? Just mixing, home is almost that, that refuge, and you don't have that separate workspace. So kind of, what are you doing at
Yeah,
all to kind of balance that?
that's for sure. I think one of the main struggles is separating work from home, right? Because like
Mm.
before all this, you can really leave your work at work, but now
Yeah.
since your work's at home, it's always there. I walk into my dining room and there's my computer and whatnot, so it's always there. But I think and work's been encouraging this too. Is just like, hey, you don't. These are not like normal times, so you don't necessarily need to be working a normal 9 to 5. Like, hey,
Mm.
take a break in the middle of the day. If you need to go grocery shopping in the middle of the day, do it. If you need to do a workout in the middle of the day, go for it. If you need to take a nap in the middle of the day, go for it. Um, so I've been kind of taking advantage of those sort of aspects of where I wouldn't be able to do it back, working from an office.
Yeah.
But it's still a struggle, I think. Trying to trying to adjust. I think it's a forever adjustment. And like I said, I think there's some days where you're like, yeah, I got this, working from home this is nice. And other times you kind of miss the, you're going crazy and you kind of miss your interactions with your coworkers and whatnot. So,
Absolutely. And I'm sure the work environment facilitates for good,
yeah.
safe spaces. And I'm sure you miss that. Like, I'm sure a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And I think for those that are listening, I know Sean's story may seem like a complete straight line, like, oh, like everything seem to be overall like pretty good, but just think something important that that I really feel for those that are graduating this year. I know last year was actually the centennial year for UCLA, and I
Yeah.
remember seeing posts last year like, oh, like 2020 is going to be better, and it's just crazy to think like wow, like we're it's definitely a huge adjustment, but navigating through postgrad is another beast. And if
Yeah.
you can just kind of talk about those years even leading up to Netflix and what that was like. I know you had, every time that we would hang out, we kind of dropped off because we were studying for the next CPA test and so on and so forth. So just kind of just talking and going into as much as you can about postgrad life, taking
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Definitely the first 2 years post grad, it's adjustment into adulthood, right? Um, so the first two years after college, I lived at home and then decided like, hey, I want to see what it's like to like live on my own. So I got an apartment in K-Town to live by
Mm-hmm.
myself and just adjusting to life as a quote unquote adult. Um, Definitely, I think at least with public accounting, you definitely grind for the first couple years, and then you kind of decide where you want to go from there. One of the, I think, actually, when I, again, this is one of those retrospect things, like, wow, things really worked out. Back, is it right before I joined Netflix? I wanted to do a rotation with my company in Germany,
That's
because
right.
they had these opportunities. Hey, we for sure talked about
Yeah, we
this.
have for sure talked about this. I remember.
And so, I talked with the team over there. They were like excited to have me, all that stuff. But there's some, there's other like staffing issues in LA and maybe some office politics as well that kind of prevented me in a sense. I didn't feel supported. It's like, hey, this is something I want to do. And if I don't get this, I don't really see a future for myself with this company. Turns out they still decided that, hey, we don't want you to go. I was like, okay, well, I think I'm going to go look for something else. So in a weird way, right? Like getting rejected for this rotation helped me find Netflix. And and another blessing in disguise is moving to Netflix, going into like love life and whatnot. But like moving to Netflix put me closer, like work-wise, with Shannon. Like we worked, our office buildings were down the street. We were able to hang out a lot more. And that's kind of how, we got started. So it's kind of like, man, what seemed like such a, again, a similar feeling with the whole track thing, where like the disappointment, the frustrations, like everything was in place kind of thing. I fulfilled all the requirements, still got rejected. Things still, happened kind of for a reason, in a sense. So again, kind of blessed in that sense, despite like that in itself being like a struggle or a disappointment, a failure, kind of led to open other doors.
No, absolutely. And it's awesome to see, like, you have multiple examples showing that, when a door closes, there's one that's meant for you that's going to open up. And I think just you've always kept pushing forward, and that's the most important thing. And you've never lost focus on just keeping on pushing forward. And like you said, just keep gaining skills for the next thing.
And keep learning. You keep learning.
Absolutely. It's always being prepared for that opportunity, right? And I think you're a prime example of that. And I think something that we are kind of similar on, but kind of doing on different timelines, is the first few years out of school, I continued to live. I continued to live on my own for 3 years post grad, and then I moved back home. And so now for you kind of did the opposite. And so you're going from graduating college, and you've got a good job, and you move back home. And if you can just talk a little bit about that adjustment and how that seems to be a lot more normal at some point in post grad. People move back home or rely on that support system. But for you, more so, just, you're going from living on your own for 4 years and being independent and living on your own schedule, and then maybe having to adjust going back home. Maybe if you can shed light on what that was like.
I feel like I actually there was not necessarily like a hard adjustment. It was more like, oh, wow, look, my mom is making awesome meals and that sort of stuff. You definitely lose, like, you kind of have to be, I think the one thing is like, when you're living in your apartment in college, you gotta go in and out as you please. And I think the one thing you don't have as much quote unquote autonomy in a sense. Hey mom, I'm going to be out late. Just make sure, blah, blah, blah. Versus like, back when you're living by yourself, it doesn't really matter what time you get home and you don't have to really tell anybody. But I think, again, going back to like how awesome my parents were, they still gave me a lot of autonomy. As long as I was, I think I've built that trust and still continue to let them know, like, if I was going to be gone, when I was coming back, all that sort of stuff. So.
Absolutely. And I'm happy that adjustment's been like that for you. And I know that for those that are listening, that may or may not be more similar to your situation. I think the important thing is still the respect and the acknowledgement of your family, because most likely if you're going back home, you're going to get some awesome meals, you're going to get some quality time. And, the biggest things is you're going to get a little bit of a buffer time to still work and save and kind of get on your feet, stand up on your feet, right? Especially at such a critical time, doing that. And so Yeah, man. And I
I
think,
think one of the
yeah.
nice things too about like living at home after college is if you think about it, when are you ever gonna, like now that I've moved out, like when will I ever live back home? It's kind of a
Mm.
nice like, this is kind of, I don't know if it's like nostalgia or sadness, but like sure, like last time living with your parents, like that's pretty awesome,
Yeah.
you know.
Same house, the same house, right? It was the same house that,
Same house that we moved to when we
mm,
moved to South Pass. Yeah.
yeah. That's gotta be extra special, just like the actual house
Yeah.
itself and your
Exactly.
family. Um,
Exactly. So it was really, it is special.
absolutely. Um, Sean, I did want to ask you something to kind of bring this whole thing together, especially during this time right now.
Yeah.
Um, we've listened and heard, just the surface level of your narrative, navigating through and transitioning from private schools to a public school, and how sports was kind of the saving grace,
Mm.
the impact of sports both seriously with track and then more recreationally when we'd play in basketball leagues, to
Yeah.
doing Deviant Voices in KCM, and being at UCLA and having a major and a minor, and then navigating through that, and then eventually leading to Netflix.
Yeah.
All the experiences, all the spaces, all the networks that you've gained in your life, um, everything that you've learned and attained, what would you say to a 13 or 14-year old, your 13 or 14-year old self? And it can be in the context of, back then or even now currently. you know I know a lot of kids are losing motivation to learn
Mm.
because they're virtually, and I know, having teacher friends, grades are locked in, so it doesn't matter what they do, like especially if
Mm.
they have a good grade, like they don't have to try, like their grades are set. So just to kind of provide um some encouragement with your story, what would you say to a 13 to 14-year old self, someone maybe just entering high school, or someone at a really, really critical point in their life where, you can start to develop some habits? What would you say to them?
I feel like you kind of touched upon it. It's like it is a critical point where you can kind of develop your habits. I mean, we're continuing to like mature, right, from like high school even through end of college, and we really don't come into who we are maybe 24, 25, right? So um, I think just exploring different things and trying to learn as much as possible. I think going back to like the more you learn, the more skill set you have to do other things, and kind of leads to more to other, opening new doors and all that. Um, so I, definitely encourage like a high school student to explore like, to explore their passions, try to learn as much as you can, but at the same time also just like, hey, I'm in high school, this is awesome,
Mm,
like, you think I remember when I was in high school, it's like, oh yeah, college is so far away, but like I'm gonna get there eventually, like, and then when you look back, like, dang, college already passed by, and then, dang, I'm already, 27, like where did all this time go? So I think just, again, just cherishing the time you have, and I think almost like the endless possibilities that you have when you're younger.
mm,
This is something I think I've been thinking about a lot, is kind of that childhood innocence, in a sense, where like
mm,
anything is possible, and you don't have that I don't know, I can't find the word, but adult mentality sometimes that holds you back. I think sometimes kids can
mm.
think like, man, I can do anything I want. I think
Yeah,
continuing to have that will help you as you get older, even to adulthood, that you can continue to think I can do anything. And I think that's a great mentality. And I think that mentality is sometimes lost as they get older and more, senile old people.
absolutely. I think you hit it right on the head. Still being curious,
Yeah.
still thinking positively, and maybe not always rationally, but just being more imaginative
No.
and utilizing that and trying to achieve whatever you want. And that's super important. And I don't know if you have anything more to just with current climate. I think this is, the current climate of things is going to affect um, the job market forever. It's going to affect many different careers, and different categories will hit harder um, in terms of
Yeah.
in terms of navigating for that and trying to find what you love, but also something that will always be relevant in terms of like career path, or at the
Yeah.
very least a job. Maybe what would you say to those same younger viewers or someone who may be thinking about what to invest their studies or time in?
Yeah. I mean, I think step one is for sure a college education really opens up a lot of opportunities. That's kind of like step one. And then my personal view is kind of like college is still the time to, is also continuing a time to like explore like what you like and what you're passionate about. And I think sometimes it's always hard for some people, like, I'm not passionate about anything, but sometimes if you kind of take, step out of yourself and think about like the things that you're doing and just continuing to do that, you don't realize it, but you're also continuing to build skills. So, it can be as something as practical as picking up an accounting minor, but it can also be like participating in like your campus like student government or whatever, and like maybe developing skills as like a programming of different events, because that's a whole nother field about like uh, what's it called, like producing events and whatnot, like getting
Mm,
involved in that, knowing how the ins and outs work. Like those are real hard skills that you can learn, but I think you don't learn anything if you don't involve yourself in something,
mm,
you know?
definitely, definitely extracurriculars, and the learning happens outside the classroom more than within the classroom. Absolutely agree. Um, yes, yes, yes. Sean, thank you for sharing your narrative with us. You've gone through, you've experienced a lot of different things, and I think one of the things that stands out to me is the ability to use failure as motivation and to come back better from it, and to use that as something of a positive influence rather than um, kind of marinating in that and let it affect you negatively. So, to those that are out there, I hope that you can take something from Sean's rich narrative and use it as inspiration and motivation to move forward, especially in today's current state, and
Yeah.
to just keep on pushing and keep on learning, like Sean said, to keep on learning, the most important thing. Sean Nang, thank you so much for spending time with us, and just, I know you're still working, so and you hopped on right after work, but I really appreciate it, and hopefully we can get back at it when Netflix blows up even more. I mean, Netflix is already on everyone's thing, but hopefully we can do a check-in at some point down the line.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so
Again,
much.
surprised that you even reached out to me, but yes.
Everyone's saying that, but it's taking me time to get to people. It's taking me time, but I'm getting around to everyone.
No, I
But
really, really appreciate it.
and
It's actually, again, I kind of treated this as like us catching up too. So it's awesome.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Sean. We're gonna stay on and talk for a bit, but we'll just say goodbye to everyone else tuning in. But we'll catch you guys next time on the Of Like Minds video podcast. Thank you so much, Sean.
Thank you.